Good morning. It's Monday, September 25th. And I want to tell you, I ran races for many, many years. I ran a lot of marathons and a lot of 10Ks. That's 10 kilometers. And it was always fun. It was a great group of people that I ran with. And I trained on the boardwalk at Sunken Meadow and would run from the boardwalk up to the golf course and back. And then I would run into the woods if I was training for a marathon. So it was a terrific 20 or so years while I was a runner, until my back went out about 20 years ago. But this past weekend, was one of the great running events of Long Island, and probably one of the great running events in the world. It's the Great Cow Harbor Day weekend. And on Saturday, 5,000 people ran in the 10K at Cow Harbor Day. And there were twice as many people in the crowds watching the race. And it's a very exciting race because you run up into the hills around Northport and then you come down Main Street at the end for about a mile. It's a mile long straight run down Main Street to the finish line by the park and the parking lots and past the old theaters and the many nice restaurants and everything. You know, Northport is a crowded town. It's very difficult to find parking when you go there. And I go there periodically to meet my son and my daughter-in-law and my grandson and my granddaughter, and we eat in a little restaurant called Ritz, just right around the corner by the park. So Northport is a beautiful town, and the Cow Harbor race is a beautiful event. It brings people together. And it's not easy to run a 10K. That's, for those of you who are not familiar with the distance, that's 6.2 miles. And you have to train. If you want to run a decent race, you have to train. And I used to enjoy the training. The training took 2 or 3 weeks of probably took 2 or 3 months of intense training. I used to train to run 5 days a week. I would be on the road before I went to work. I would get up at 6:30 in the morning or so, run for 45 minutes. I did about 5 miles every morning. And if I was training for a marathon or something special, I increased my training period. When I trained for a marathon, I had a 12-week cycle to train. I would start running about 25 miles a week and gradually increase that until I was hitting 80 miles a week. Can you imagine running 80 miles a week? I did that for the last 2 weeks of training. And then for the 2 weeks before the actual marathon, I would ease back down to a moderate training schedule, back about 20 miles a week. And then I'd be ready to run marathon. And I was successful in all of the marathons that I ran, except the first marathon. And the first marathon was the Stephen Talkhouse Marathon. That was a race that ran from Southampton to Montauk. 26 miles. And when I ran the first race, that first marathon that I ever did, I failed to complete. And I failed to complete it because I wasn't mentally equipped to understand the pain at the end of the race if we weren't properly trained. Because I had only been running for about 10 months or so before I was stupid enough to attempt to run a marathon. But at the end of that race, for me, the end of that race was the 22-mile mark. I just was worn out and I didn't know how I was going to feel the next day. So I stopped running the Talkhouse Marathon at the 22-mile mark and went into this parking lot that was on the side of the trail, the course. It's on the side of the course there, and I waited for this car to come by to pick up the stragglers in the race. And sure enough, the car came by, and I got a ride the last 4 miles back to the finish line. And the amazing thing about this is I felt like crap at that point in time, but I had to drive from Southampton back to Smithtown, right? The amazing thing about this entire episode was that the next morning I woke up feeling fine. And in my head I'm saying, what kind of schmuck are you? You quit in the middle of the race and you could have finished. That was the only marathon that I did not finish. And I had some good times in some marathons. I ran the Long Island Marathon 3 times, and my best time was a 3 hour and 38-minute run. And then I got a little bit older, and I did a 3:40, some other race probably down on the south shore of Jersey. There was a race, and I think I did 3:40 down there. And then I did the D.C. Marathon, and I did the Honolulu Marathon. That was exciting. I went over there because my son was in the Navy, and I went over there to visit him and the grandchildren and his wife, and we used to do that trip twice a year. We went to Honolulu for all the time my son was stationed there, and so I was lucky enough to run the Honolulu Marathon one year, and that was a terrific race. All of the marathon races were good, but the Honolulu Marathon race was unusual because it started at 5 o'clock in the morning, and running at 5 o'clock in the morning was necessary because it got hot by 9 o'clock in the morning, so it was a tough race. And I remember when I finished that race, my grandkids were little. They were probably 2 years old. I had twin boys, 2 years old, and their young brother, who was about 1 year old, 9 months old, whatever, and they came and they sat with me at the end of the race, and they were attempting to get a massage from the people that would give massages at the end of the marathon. And it was a very wonderful, wonderful experience. All of the running that I did was wonderful. And it kept me healthy and kept my weight down and allowed me to eat whatever I wanted to eat. So running was wonderful exercise. And it's too bad that my back went out when I was so young. I was 66 or 67 when it happened. And then I had to cut back on the running, and now I don't do much of physical exercise like that anymore. I was still able to play golf at that point for a while, and I did that. And so that's my experience with marathons. And I enjoyed watching some of the news coverage of Cow Harbor, and I watched the New York Marathon when it's on TV also. So have a great day. That's my marathon. That's my running experiences. Take care. See you tomorrow. Bye.